Hello and welcome to NextOppSocial. We are your hosts, Richelle Wright and Joanne Buford. We believe entrepreneurship is empowerment and are committed to the development and progress of entrepreneurs by providing you with the information you need to build thriving businesses. Today, we are very excited to welcome co-founder and CEO of SpaceLab Detroit, Karen Burton. Karen has over 30 years of experience in the design and construction industries, which allowed her also recently co-found AE Collaborative, a consulting firm that brings together small firms to work on big projects. Her work is rooted in creating smart solutions with everything that she does. So welcome, Karen. We're very excited to have you here at NextOppSocial. So let's dive in. Tell us about yourself, your background, and how you got started with entrepreneurship.
Well, thank you, Rachel and Joanne, for having me. I've known Joanne for quite some time, so this is a treat. So thank you so much. Wow, how did I get started with entrepreneurship? I guess I'm a serial entrepreneur, but when I think back, entrepreneurship really runs in my blood. It's in my family. My grandmother, my grandparents started a grocery store in Flint back in the 1940s. My grandfather was also employed with the General Foundry in Flint, so he was in the automotive industry and plant, but my grandmother ran the store. And for as long as from the time I was born until I was about 10 years old, I always saw her operating that grocery store and watched how she interacted with her customers. So that was my first entree into entrepreneurship. He would let me count the money, when I was a little kid, and then I acted as a cashier even at 7 or 8 years old. So seeing her work and operate there. And then when I graduated from college, I graduated during a recession. I was one of the few people in my class to get a job at an architecture firm, but that didn't last long. I got laid off because of the economy, and I started my own firm, not a firm, but a design company. So I did architectural and graphic design on my own for a while. And then I went back to work for some other firms, worked at General Motors for a while in facilities management, and I was working for Kelly Services at the time. And I thought to myself, Kelly Services is getting a chunk of my paycheck. Why don't I just contract myself out and freelance? So I did that, sent my resume to one of the biggest architecture firms in the country here in Detroit, and they hired me, and I have not looked back since. Well, I should say I looked back once, went back to work for another firm briefly for about 1.5 years, but for the most part, for the last 25, 30 years, I've been freelancing and working as an entrepreneur, owning my own businesses.
Wow, so we say it was born in you from the cradle.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I have an uncle who was an entrepreneur. He did very well in the tech industry. My brother owns a couple businesses. I have cousins who own their own businesses. So when I say it runs through my blood, it runs through my blood. A lot of us own businesses. So we're doing what we love and what we've been shown. When I was a kid, I didn't really realize, that this is what my family owned, this business, and they were a staple in the community. Didn't really realize that, but now that I'm older and look back on it, I can see it.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, even not realizing that your family owned these businesses, you got to see the behavior.
Yeah.
You got to observe the interactions. And of course, you had the model, right? Of not just men, but also women literally operating and running businesses.
Oh, yeah. So not only was my grandmother, not only did she run the grocery store, but she was a butcher. And there are not a lot of female butchers these days. So back in the 1940s and 50s, when the people that sold the meat taught her how to actually cut the meat and the way to prepare it and sell it, being a Black woman, especially who did that, you didn't see that too often. So
Mhm.
downtown called her the Lady Butcher. She liked to like to laugh about that. But yeah, being a woman doing things that were traditionally male,
Mhm.
I guess that's why it didn't really hinder me to go into architecture or go into a field related to construction. So
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't even imagine. I mean, I gotta imagine you had to feel like a duck out of water when you were working these jobs. Like your mind had to have been racing. You had to have been almost like hungry for a certain type of stimulation. Sitting in a space like that as a W-2, like something you said caught my attention. You sitting at Kelly Services. And look, because you have that entrepreneur experience, that means you're counting the money. Like,
right.
as
Like I said, they
entrepreneurs,
were
that's what we
taking some of
do.
my money, right?
Yeah, that's what we do. We figure out the arbitrage real quick. So you knew what the arbitrage was,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, so I mean, that's absolutely incredible. I mean, because a lot of entrepreneurs don't have that experience. Like they don't know the arbitrage. They don't know that they're only getting paid maybe 1/3 of what worth. The company's pocketing the other 2/3.
Right. Right. So I mean, and that doesn't mean that I was able to, put myself out there and take all the money. I have to take into consideration my health insurance and paying taxes, because the taxes are going to be higher when you freelance, right? So had to take all those things into consideration, but still I would rather be working for myself than for somebody else. Right. Yeah.
So not only are you an entrepreneurial, but you're also a civic leader. Like I've watched you over the last 10, 15 years, and you're so humble. That's the one thing that's always struck me, the humility you have. But you have poured into, helped so many, mentored directly and indirectly through a lot of these civic engagements that you're involved in, right? And I applaud and celebrate that, and I applaud humility.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about it. I think this is my purpose. This is what I'm sitting here to do. So, it's not, I don't promote it a lot. If the promotion comes, if people come and ask me about doing an article or something like that, that's great, but I'm going to do it anyway. I am a spiritual person. I believe God sent me here to do this, and I am finally, after a lot of years, putting all the pieces together and seeing that, this is where I'm supposed to be.
I'm a firm believer that you can't put your life's energies behind a compromise, right? And I'm listening to you, and when I listen to you, it reminds me of a book I read not too long ago where it talks about flow, right? Where you're actually doing the things that give you energy, where you're doing it, the things just kind of fit. And oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we have these rabbit minds, and we see something and we identify the arbitrage, like I'm gonna do that. And then we see something else and we identify arbitrage. I'm gonna do that too. And then I can do this and I can do that.
Right.
But I've also watched you in the sense that you've been very purposeful. Because I know a lot of opportunities have been presented to you. How have you avoided making that error in judgment? How have you kept things streamlined, stayed focused on your focus, so you're continually planting seeds in fertile soil as opposed to sprinting after every single thing that pops up, right?
Yeah, so, sometimes you do go after things that you should not. And you bang your head against the wall trying to figure out why it's not going to work. I think a lot of it comes with experience, just knowing experience and listening. So when these things are presented to you, you really listen to what the opportunity might be, or listen to what the opportunity is not. And I finally learned, how does this fit in with my mission? a lot of times as entrepreneurs, well, I shouldn't say a lot of times, when you're an entrepreneur and you run a business, you should be developing your mission and vision statements. Do the same for your personal life. How does this opportunity fit in with my mission and vision of not only my business, but my personal life? How much time is it going to take? How much effort am I going to have to put into it? A lot of times when things are draining you, it's not your purpose. Maybe it's not what you should be. If it's too hard or takes too long to get started or to build, maybe it's not what you should be doing.
So I've also seen the flip side of that, right? For me, what's been fascinating is because of being there at SpaceLab, I got to see what I already knew, right? And I was looking at you online and we bump into each other. And I was like, if she's involved in all these different projects, Karen is working. Like, I don't see you at restaurants taking steak and egg Instagram pictures. You know, I don't see you online taking pictures of the latest and greatest vacation you went on. It seems like every 2-3 weeks, right? You are unapologetically putting in the work, doing the dirt, right?
You and I have a connection, Juwan, because I have been thinking about that lately.
Yeah.
I think I now have a love-hate relationship with social media. I like to post, I like to blog. It takes effort. I like taking the pictures. But when you really, unless social media is your actual business, are really working in your business, you don't have time for a lot of picture taking. You know, I was just sitting here with one of my business partners just before we got on this Zoom. You know, we are working on a project for Black architects in Detroit, where we highlight Black architects in Detroit. We are looking at writing a book. We're doing another project that you're going to hear about very soon. We just spent an hour and a half, 2 hours talking and planning. We didn't take one picture.
Yeah.
Which now that I'm thinking about it, we should have taken a picture. Last time when we met, we did take a picture. We posted, but this time we forgot all about it. So social media is great. It is great. And I like to post pictures of food because I love to eat and I love to visit all the new restaurants. Haven't been to a lot of restaurants lately, other than take. But yeah, I love doing that. But sometimes when you're in the moment and actually doing work, you're not thinking about posting. So maybe, you know, before you sit down, you take a bunch of pictures and then come back and build your content on that later. But yeah, my social media is not what it used to be because in the last few years, there's been a lot of activity. And I haven't been as focused as I would like to be on it.
But I think that's okay. It ebbs and flows. It has its seasons. Yeah. We absolutely know at this point it's not going anywhere. So it's always it's here and ready for when you are. But I'd like to talk a little more about that too. How you went from you left these W-2, you started working as a consultant. You've established yourself as a consultant. But you've built SpaceLab, you've built these other things as well. I'd like to hear more about that journey, how getting into consulting and then realizing things need to be bigger than just consulting, right? For what you're doing as well.
So I was happy consulting and I would work for different firms for time, and then also working on my own projects. Sometimes working in my clients' offices, sometimes working from home. The working from home piece is where SpaceLab came in. So if I'm working at home, working on an architecture project and I need to print out those drawings and mark them up, I don't have a large format plotter here where I can print out drawings that are 24 by 36 or 18 by 24. I don't have that at my house. Bigger architecture firms have that. I don't have somebody that's sitting next to me where I can just say, hey, what do you think about the way this kitchen looks in this house or in this office that I'm designing? So I had shared an office with an architect named Ken Crutcher. He and I shared an office for a little while, and we talked about bringing in more people to share the office space. And then, you know, when I'm meeting with my clients, I don't want to bring them to my house, most of them.
Right.
And then meeting at Starbucks is awkward.
Mhm.
You may be able to meet at a library. Southfield Library has some great meeting rooms, but you know, they might be full.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was thinking, Ken and I were thinking at first, and then I was thinking, what if we have this office space where we can share amenities with each other, share the equipment, share the rent. And that's how SpaceLab was born. It was a space that I wanted for myself when I was freelancing and contracting. And then I did a survey. That's important. Test your model. Did a survey of my colleagues and some other professionals to see what they would want, if they would buy into this type of space, if they would pay rent here, what type of amenities they wanted. And then at the same time, or around the same time, my husband got a buyout from his position with a bank. So he and I became business partners and we opened SpaceLab.
Nice.
That's how it came about.
So with the evolution of this past year, I kind of want to dive into it. You know, especially where SpaceLab is, you're surrounded by a lot of other businesses that are occupying office space for their employees, right? And that disappeared almost overnight, right? Of everyone down there, even just the activity downtown in general disappeared overnight.
Yeah.
So I'd like, you know, now that masks were lifted, right, today and whatnot, we're coming out of this other end. I'd like to hear, you know, how that all went for you a little bit, but also your perspective on what you see moving forward, because you're already working with people who were working remotely anyway as well, you know. So I'm curious to hear, especially from with your co-working space, you know, how you kind of what you're envisioning of where you think things are headed a little.
Yeah, so I'm thinking back to because I just sent an email out yesterday, and I'll tell you a little bit about what it said, but I think it was March 24th, 2020. Joanne was one of the last people that I saw walking out of this space. Joanne and one other guy. And, you know, people were saying, oh, we're going to go home. We're going to work from home. And then we got the mandate that all offices were closed, right? And I was sitting at the front desk and I was just thinking, oh my goodness, what is going to happen here? Everybody's leaving. I'm sitting, I felt lonely. Yeah. By myself, you know, everybody's walking out, going home. A few months before that, we had just really started our virtual office business, where a lot of people they want a business presence, and they may want some, you know, meeting room space like that. So we had really started promoting that. So during the shutdown time, that portion of the business really increased. People are sitting at home, they're thinking about, you know, I'm going to start a business, or maybe they, you know, are in a very public facing business and they don't want to do that anymore. So a lot of people are thinking about entrepreneurship, starting their business, and that portion of our business, you know, has really taken off. In the meantime, we lost a few customers who had physical space here, offices and desk space, but not a whole lot. You know, a lot of our members, you know, were working from home. but they stayed on as members. They may come in for copies or things like that. Nobody was really meeting. And our event space, businesses related to events was pretty much non-existent. So, that was disheartening, but, got to pivot. And I know that's cliche now, but, you got to think about, and we've had to think about, what is working from home looking like? And it's a lot of this, talking through Zoom, video calls. But people are even getting tired of that and weary with Zoom too. I love being on with you guys. That's not what I was saying.
No, we understand. We get it.
There are people who are on calls hour, and in the last few months, people have been ready to come back to work. And so we've gotten an increase in memberships with our desk space. People are, they want to see people. They want to have a different work environment. So I'm grateful for that. They've been contacting us for that and for meeting space again. We limit the capacity in our meeting rooms now. You all have done an event here. So our Jewel Box conference room, we have had up to like 40 people in that room. Now we only limit it to 9. Our smaller conference room is limited as well. And we know that the mask, they say, if you've been vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask. We're still requiring people to wear masks because we don't know who's vaccinated.
Right.
And right now, we don't know if we can even ask people that question. There are privacy laws. So it's been, wow. There's always something new, something different, that we never, ever thought that we would have to deal with. Developing policies and, we have our business plan, we have processes in place. I thought we would have to do anything like that, but, it's a learning experience and it's something that now that we can share with other people, if need be, we can share with other entrepreneurs because there have to be policies in place now for all businesses that employ people, right? And especially construction businesses. So we deal with a lot of construction companies. So it's a learning experience, but it's also can be a business building experience. Look at every aspect of what this pandemic has meant and what it brings with it. And how can you turn those lemons into lemonade? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this whole year and a half, almost year. Wow, a year.
I know.
Crazy. It's been crazy. I think we shut down, like I said, March 24th. But because we have a lot of people that get their mail here, I was not at home a whole lot. We remained open. Because that is an essential business. So we were here, the first few months, maybe 3 hours a day so people could pick their mail up. We would have people schedule time to pick up their mail. And then in July, we opened, we just opened and limited capacity for the number of people that will work here per day. So we're still here, still operating. It does feel a little lonely. It's not as crowded as it used to be. We don't have our Celebrate the Win sessions that we would have once a month. We don't have all the food. We just started bringing snacks back, individually packaged snacks, and but it's different. But we're starting to see more people show up every day, so that's good too.
So there's a quote out there that I think I mean, we've heard a lot of world leaders say it. I think Rahm Emanuel made it popular when he said, "You never waste a good crisis."
Right.
Never waste a good crisis, right?
Yeah.
But with that being said, you know, part of what it is to be an entrepreneur is to see things first. Right? That's how we succeed. We pivot, or we live on the edges, right? And we catch the things for everyone else when we start coming up with solutions. And so I know that you've had to spend a lot of time ideating and thinking about, okay, how can we reimagine providing space for people? What does that look like moving forward? I know we've had a couple conversations about it. You know, what do you see changing given everything that's transpired in terms of co-working spaces and providing community for individuals?
Well, just like every office space, I believe there's going to be a hybrid model. And we have to learn to do that with co-working. So people will be here sometimes, but we have to be able to give them a community experience while they're working from home as well.
Yes.
So we're looking at, you know, what does that feel like for people? What does that look like to have a co-working experience while you're at home?
Yes.
So yeah, that is that's a big thing for us. We're also looking at, you know, other locations. You know, we have a 7-mile location, and unfortunately, we closed that at the end of March of this year. We were operating inside, we were managing a space inside of another business, and due to the pandemic and some other things, we just had to close that location. But we are, you know, looking at, you know, what other locations around the city might work as well, and providing great co-working or community work experiences for people in other locations. We know sometimes we are in the financial district downtown. And the biggest thing that we hear from people is, what about parking? And parking can be an issue downtown. So we don't want something like parking to hinder people. So we have to take a look at that, because you know, like I said, we have a lot of new customers, a lot of who we could turn into members of the co-working space. And we are exploring new opportunities, new ways to make that happen, new ways to help people build their businesses that were born out of this pandemic. All right. You know, it's great to have that great idea for your business, but you got to know how to grow it like a baby. Right. I don't have kids myself, but my businesses are my babies, I guess. So yeah.
So, I mean, I really have, I mean, man, it's 3 types of businesses that I've always said to myself, man, I'd have to be prepared to take a couple of years off my life if I was going to do it. One of them was the restaurant industry. I look at what restaurant owners go through. Woo! I'm trying to tell you.
And my brother owns a restaurant, and I have a cousin that's opening a restaurant. Yeah, that I used to want to own one. Oh my goodness, you would never sleep.
No.
Yeah. You only got to see it up close one time.
Wow.
But I also thought about how challenging it can be to operate a co-working space. And in the sense that, you know, people in restaurants can be very fickle, right? People's tastes change, people's habits change, people's needs change. It's very fluid, right? And in many respects, with the work that you're doing at SpaceLab is very similar. Like, you're kind of, don't want to say you're at the whims of people's taste, but to an extent you are. You got to be responsive to that, right? You know, oftentimes when people talk about creating community, the extent that they think creating a community is, okay, let's set up a coffee shop or put on some type of, you know, this, that, and the other. I'm like, building community means you're building the plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
It means you're providing you have to provide a space where you got to be able to build, right? You can't spend so much time looking at the roof of the house if the plumbing and the foundation isn't there. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so when I look at how important the work you're doing is, I look at your work like the plumbing. I look at your work like the foundation. I look at your work like providing the electrical, right? And making sure that there's actually a space for the socialization to take place and for the engagement. And now I firmly believe that I think SpaceLab is going to rebound like tremendously. I know people are sick and tired of Zoom. I know they are. I love Zoom, to be quite frank, because I'm not spending money on gas anymore.
Right.
And getting porched at appointments and whatnot. But for me, the other thing that I find, flip side of Zoom that I find very ironic is that I know I personally thought I was going to work less. I work more now.
Right.
Because of Zoom.
Yeah.
And I think what people don't realize is part of the importance in being in a space like SpaceLab is that it actually gives you a reprieve from that constant back-to-back, saying hello, greeting someone, you know, being a human being as opposed to a bot plugged into your phone, right? You know, that's where I see a lot of the value in terms of what you are doing. And I love the fact that you mentioned the fact there are a lot of businesses that were born through the pandemic. So their needs are different. They see entrepreneurship differently, right?
Right.
So, you know, I know, you know, Rochelle and I have had the conversation multiple times, like we need backgrounds and, you know, we need sound equipment and, you know, eventually we want to start doing productions and whatnot. And that's kind of the direction I see the industry going. It's not just simply provision of space.
Right. And that's not going to happen here in my home office, like you said, with your printers and things like that. So.
Yeah. But the provision of actual services. Yeah.
I appreciate, first of all, you saying that, you know, the work that goes into building a co-working space.
Yes.
Because a lot of people think, you know, oh, I'm going to open a co-working space and we'll put up some desks and
all the day.
and part of that, I kind of thought that way too. I mean, I knew I had to do all the upfront work with surveying members and making sure that we had everything that people want. And building out a great space, having an architect design the space and, you know, making it a great experience when you're here. But I thought that once we opened, I was going to get back to my consulting business and I'd be here every day, you know, working on my business and people would come up to me and maybe ask me a question here and there. Co-working has taken over everything. You know, that is the primary business right now. Because that is where we have invested all of our money, the bulk of our money more than any other business. So that is our main focus, right? The things that entrepreneurs are going to need, we are building those things out. So the podcast studio or content studio is what I'm calling it now. That is coming. We got a great grant from Design Corps Detroit. And our initial thought was we were going to do a podcasting studio, but people need so much more than podcasting now, right? You may need some green screen backgrounds or blue screen backgrounds or something to help with your Zoom calls, because Zoom calls are not going to go away. You may need something for photography. So we are developing our content studio and making that available, finding the right space for it so we can make it available to entrepreneurs. And looking at, you know, all those other things that people are going to need when they come into the space. So
now, you said something was kind of triggered a thought, right? I remember the first day I walked into SpaceLab. I remember the first day like it was yesterday, because I had patronized a couple other places. and worked at a couple other places. And so I saw what it was, right? Because some of these other places, not all of them, but some of the places I patronized or maybe conducted appointments at, I mean, really all they did was put out a couple chairs. There was some bad coffee, you know, a couple flower pots here and there.
Mhm.
I mean, I mean, that was the extent of it.
Mhm.
Really. I mean, I went to a couple places and it seemed like it was like I don't know, there was like a business, well, a sewing business in the background taking place while people were meeting in the space. I was like, oh, okay. And, you know, what really caught my attention, soon as I came off the elevator and I looked at that jewelry box room, I said, oh, they spent some money in this. I was like, oh, some time was spent designing in this space. This is like, because, you know, for me, one of the biggest challenges I had with co-working spaces is, okay, so I'm meeting my colleagues, I'm meeting my friends.
Mhm.
But what happens when the executive comes into town
Yeah.
with the deep pockets?
And you and I had that discussion.
Yeah, where can I bring them? I mean, I
Yeah.
can't bring them somewhere and it's a hole in the wall in the place.
Right.
And, you know,
Right.
and the coffee has been sitting there for 2 days, you know?
Furniture is dusty.
Yeah, that's not gonna work,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So I know a lot of thought and precision had to go into that.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think people really understand. I wish we could like put in that fourth box here so people can literally see what SpaceLab is. I mean, that was, I mean, that's a diamond in the rough.
Thank you. So we do have a video available, SpaceLab Detroit.
Yeah.
Make sure to link it.
But yeah, in addition to doing the survey of the members, we surveyed a lot of different spaces by visiting them. You know, so just about every co-working space here in Detroit, we visited.
Mhm.
Before I even knew that WeWork was coming to Detroit, I went to one in Chicago. Bobby went to one in Santa Monica. I think we visited another one as well. I met one of the founders of WeWork here. He was here for an event that I was part of. He wouldn't talk too much about co-working. I tried to pull it out of him. Then I found out that they were coming. So 2 things happened. We opened in June of 2017. In February of 2017, one of our biggest competitors moved to a new space. And then it was announced that WeWork was coming to Detroit. So when you start out as one of the few co-working spaces in the city, and then all of a sudden, the largest co-working space in the world is now in your market, in your backyard. Mm-hmm. And one of your biggest competitors moves to a nice, new, fresh space. I woke up and I was like, oh my goodness, is this what we should be doing? Should we just stop what we're doing right now and do something else? But this had been a dream for a long time. I knew that nobody was in our niche space. So we moved forward and worked to create something that nobody else had. Mm-hmm. Right. And Joanne, you talked about building the community. That is big. That's big for us. A lot of people tell us it feels like family here. And I kind of feel that. I feel that way too, and not kind of, I do feel that way. Everybody that walks through that door is about giving them the best co-working, entrepreneurship, and customer service experience. We want people to feel like this is their office. This is your office. We know you're bringing your customers here. It has to look immaculate. It has to be professional. Yeah, we have companies that are one person. We have companies that are one person, companies that are much larger than that. But they all should feel like their business is the most professional business, the best business, and they all get the best customer service here. You never know who's going to walk in.
Yeah.
Right. You never know who the guest is going to be. You never know who may come through for a tour. So we want everybody to have the best experience here.
So with having to, not even in this last year, but talking about even before, you've had to make a lot of hard decisions or pivots or, really double down on things. And that can be not just frustrating, but disheartening sometimes, right? So what keeps you motivated? Where do you get your inspiration and your drive from when you hit those walls sometimes?
I was just thinking this morning, the last few months of last year, I did not want to pivot anymore. I didn't want to learn anything new. I didn't want to read about anything new. Just stop with all the new stuff and all the new ideas. I didn't want to ideate anything else. But what inspired? Entrepreneurship inspires me. Building something new inspires me. You guys inspire me. I remember when you started this NextOppSocial and, having your events in person, and then you seem to pivot so quickly to doing these online. And I'm glad to see that they're going so well. So watching businesses grow and having these, having great conversations about businesses and communities, building cities, all that inspires me. And I like looking for the opportunity in whatever kind of business case. So there are lots of ideas around design and construction, and how can we help those businesses grow and be their best. But for other businesses as well, we're looking at how can we help people who are, I don't like to use the word disadvantaged, but this is how it was presented to me. More disadvantaged businesses, people who want to create a business but have never been presented with that opportunity. They have the idea, but don't have a lot of opportunity. I've heard Arlen Hamilton, who started a fund, a fund for businesses. She prefers the word underestimated. So
I like that word.
Rather than underrepresented or disadvantaged, I prefer underestimated. So we're looking at courses for businesses for people who are more underestimated as well. So just seeing those opportunities to help people grow their businesses, that's what really inspires me.
I love that.
So you said something earlier that caught my attention. It's been consistent. And for me, it's one of the things that I learned by observing and seeing some of the things you do. And you mentioned surveying, beta testing, reconnaissance, as I call it, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes
you have to be stealth.
Yeah, so few people do that. And for me, that's one of the biggest things I took. I mean, you got this passion, this idea, you just want to run out and sprint and make it happen. But I ask individuals all the time, have you really taken the time not to copy your competition, but at least know what they're doing, so you can at least identify maybe the things that they're not doing so well. Right. And so you can contrast what you are doing well and, play to your strengths, right?
Right.
You've done that quite a bit. I'd be interested in like some of the tactics, strategies, or just maybe nuggets you share in terms of that. But then there's another subject that is of deep interest to me too, that I know you're involved in. And that is those who've been underestimated, particularly in the architectural field, and to be transparent, African Americans, right? There's a lot of rich history of African American architects here in Detroit Metro. And it's like, you wouldn't even know. And I don't know the reasons why. I know you speak to that. I mean, I know the reasons why, but at the same time, I don't know why that history is kind of lost. I know you're probably aware of the fact that we had an opportunity to interview Miss Sharon Madison.
Yep.
And to me, it's amazing that people are not aware of the history of that Madison building sitting down. Right? That's those, you know, I applauded her and I applaud you because I know operating the downtown space, I mean, talk about being amongst wolves and sharks. And, you know, the games that are played down there, and I'll leave it at that because I don't want to get you in trouble. I'm not going to start naming names and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's not a game to be in engineering and construction and be operating a business downtown. It's not.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if you could speak to that, the reconnaissance piece and why that's important, how you go about it. And then I know you're passionate about this topic of the underestimated, not getting the love and attention they should get, particularly in the architectural, engineering, industrial field here.
Okay. Yeah. So the reconnaissance, say the word.
Reconnaissance.
Yes. It won't come out.
Yeah.
That is so important. You got to know what your competition is doing, like you said. And can you introduce something that they're not? You know, surveying your potential customers. What do they? We still do surveys. I'm going to be sending one out soon, asking people, you know, were you vaccinated? Do you want to, or it may not come out like that. It may just say, you know, do you want to share with us if you were vaccinated? You know, because we have to prepare for that. How do we know how to operate in this environment if we don't ask the questions? Right? So we had a lot of conversations in the middle of, at the beginning of the pandemic with our members, but, you know, it's not difficult if you own a restaurant to go to a restaurant that might be similar to what you're thinking about and just sit there and watch the customers to order the food and see what it tastes like. I had to do the same with CoWorking. There weren't a lot when we were starting to think about opening here in Detroit, but I went to all the, you know, just sign up and say, I want to work for the day. Or I had a mailbox at one of them. And then when I went to other cities, hey, do they have a co-working space? What's it like to sit there and work and watch how people operate there? What do their conference rooms look like? What does the furniture look like when people go into the space? Is it clean? You know, what are the habits of the people that work there? How what are their operating hours? You know, how often do people want to use the space? So it's not difficult to do. Create a different email address and gather as much information as you can. Email somebody and ask them about their business. Or if you are in one city, maybe somebody across the country, I learned this from a class I took, maybe somebody across the country or a few states away wouldn't mind talking to you about their business that's similar to what you operate, because you're not in direct competition with them, right? You know, there's another, there aren't a lot of, I shouldn't say that now because there may be more. There aren't a lot of co-working spaces that focus on the built environment. There didn't used to be. But there was one in Oakland, California that announced that they were opening before we did, but we opened before they did. And now I talk fairly often with the owner of that space. So he and I trade ideas. You know, he's way across in California. But we've also talked about collaborating on some things, you know, to get a wider audience.
Mm-hmm.
You never know, if you call somebody who's a few cities away, maybe there's some things that you could do together and that you can learn from each other. And then the underestimated piece. Oh my goodness. I'm a Black woman who, as a 10-year-old, 10-year-old, decided that she wanted to be an architect, not knowing that there were no Black female architects licensed in the state of Michigan when I was that little kid.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I had an uncle who was an architect, Black architect. He worked here in Detroit, where he was one of the architects on Cobo Hall. But he died when I was really young, so I didn't get to talk to him much. So I didn't have a lot of role models in that field. A lot of my family was in the medical field, so they didn't know a lot about architecture, but they always encouraged me. My dad used to walk me through the houses that were being built in our neighborhood, and I loved the construction. So my parents really encouraged me in that area, pushed me in the architecture direction, probably because of my uncle. But in college, there weren't a lot of people that looked like me in my classes. When I got my first couple jobs in Flint, when I decided I wanted to go back home, there was nobody that looked like me, actually working on the projects. And nobody really mentored me and said, hey, Karen, maybe you should go back to grad school so you can be a licensed architect, which is not something I've done. I didn't see people that looked like me actually working on the projects till I moved to Detroit, to the Detroit area. And then, you know, 10 years later, when people said to me, I don't know any Black architects in Detroit. And they said that to Sandra Little, who is a Black female licensed architect. She and I said, wait a minute, we need to do something about this. We need to tell people who's here. We identified 80 or more people who work in the architecture profession, licensed and unlicensed. There may be more than that now. But we need to tell these stories. We're in a city that's 80% African American. We have buildings, almost 100 buildings, midtown to downtown, that have been, that Black people have worked on, have been designers of. People need to know, you know. People should not be surprised when we say that the Museum of African American History was designed by Black architects. It is critically important to us to tell these stories so that people know who designed and built Detroit. We hear names like Albert Kahn, and we know he's done great work. Yamasaki, beautiful buildings, done great work. But there's also Nathan Johnson, whose work is probably in just about every district in the city of Detroit. And he is a master of modern architecture. And he's still alive. You know, he got the American Institute of Architects Detroit gold medal just a few years ago, 2018, 2019. But that was 20 years after he closed his firm. He's in his 90s. Wow. We have a trailblazer generation, the first Black architects to practice in Detroit. He is the only, he's on our list, he's the only living member. I think we identified a couple others now. but 20 years after he closed his firm, and nobody, he was not recognized like that before. He's gotten a lot of recognition in the last couple of years, and most of that is due to the work that Sandra and I have been doing to bring focus to Black architects. And I don't want to be boastful about that, but it's important that people know, and we're proud of the fact that, you know, we're doing this work now and people know. So as I may have mentioned earlier, you know, we're working on a book soon. We're going to have interviews soon, and we've got another project that is going to be coming out very soon. So
it's exciting.
Yeah, it's a labor of love.
Mm-hmm.
We hope to make some money from it one day. But, we love the work that we do with this. Noir Design Party is the name of the project. So.
Very nice. So as we're getting towards the end here, we have a few questions that we always ask our guests at the end.
Okay.
And the first one is always, what would you consider your superpower to be?
Oh, superpower. You sent me this. And I asked Sandra about this because I was like, what is my superpower? She said the ideas.
Mm-hmm.
All the ideas that I come up with. And I said, Sandra, you know, but you got ideas are a dime a dozen. You got to be able to implement the ideas, right? Mm-hmm. So I said, you know, I have tons of ideas. I've implemented some, started implementing some, and then some have been fully implemented. And I guess I have to be proud of the ones that have been fully implemented and that I've moved forward. So I guess it's the ideas.
I would absolutely say so. I think that's you're right. Having the idea is one thing, but being able to move forward with it and executing any of it, that is absolutely a superpower. And if there's one very important lesson, I know we talked about a lot of different things, but one very important lesson you'd like to leave our audience with regarding entrepreneurship, what would that be?
An important lesson. Document your processes.
Yeah.
Do your business plan, document that. When you're navigating and working in your business, document what you do. You may want to sell your business. You may want to franchise your business. And when you get to that point where it grows up to be a full-grown business, and you may want to move on, have your succession plan in place. Mm-hmm. You want to have all that information documented so somebody else can, you know, either move into place and take it over. Maybe you just move into the background, or if you want to sell it. Can't sell a business if it's all in your head.
Right. That goes with those ideas, right?
Yeah.
We got to implement
Right.
those too.
Right.
Put it on paper.
Right. Put it on paper.
So Karen, if people want to learn more about you, SpaceLab, your other projects, all this coming up, what's the best way for them to learn about that and get in contact with you?
So they can contact me at KarenB@SpaceLabDetroit.com. SpaceLab's website is SpaceLabDetroit.com. For the Noir Design Party project, it is NOIR Design, PARTI.com. And then we talked about AE Collaborative. We don't have a website for that yet, but you can contact me at the SpaceLab email address.
Very nice. Perfect. Thank you, Karen, again for joining us here today. We're going to provide all those links below here in the show notes so that you can binge them, right? And learn more about her and SpaceLab and everything in between. We're going to be continuing this conversation inside the NextOppSocial After Show group on Facebook. We invite you to join us there. We're going to put the link in the description as well. You can also go to our Facebook page, NextOppSocial, click community, and we're happy to have you inside. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button here on YouTube or visit our website at nextoppsocial.com to learn more about everything we do. We look forward to helping you achieve a life of satisfaction and success. Thank you again.
Thank you all. It was